The teacher yelled, "You stink like fish," and expelled the black fisherman's son. The next day, his father's Bentley pulled up at school. "Mr. Thomas, the smell coming from your desk is bothering the whole class." Teacher Barbara Winter's voice cut through the silence of the classroom like a sharp blade. 40 students instantly turned their gaze to Marcus Thomas, sitting in the second-to-last row. Hello friends, if you new here then don't forget to hit subscribe button, and if you like then hit the like button also, and don't forget to tell me in the comments where you from watching this video. The 16-year-old boy with dark skin and short curly hair swallowed hard. His broad shoulders stiffened under the plain t-shirt he wore. He had arrived late that morning because he had helped his father unload the boat before dawn, a routine they had followed for years to support their family. "I'm sorry, teacher. I took a shower before I came, but..." "Shower?" Barbara interrupted with a short, cruel laugh. "With seawater? You stink of fish, Thomas. It's disgusting." She dramatically pinched her nose with her fingers, covered in expensive rings. "Get up and get out of my classroom now. Come back when you've learned the basics of personal hygiene." The silence that followed was deafening. Some students laughed nervously, others looked away, embarrassed. Marcus stood motionless for a few seconds, his face a mask of wounded dignity. Despite his 16 years, there was a maturity in those eyes, one forged by hard work since childhood. "I said, get out." The teacher slammed her fist on the desk, her face contorted in an expression of disgust. "People like you need to understand your place. This is an educational institution, not a fish market." Marcus stood up slowly, ignoring the whispers and snickers. He gathered his books with meticulous care, as if every movement was calculated to preserve his dignity. As he walked toward the door, he felt the weight of discriminatory glances following him, something he had been painfully familiar with since his first day at that private school, where his presence was seen as an anomaly. Ms. Winters had been teaching literature at the prestigious Westwood Academy for 20 years. The daughter of a traditional family, she cultivated a sense of superiority that spilled over into her treatment of students she considered inadequate by the institution's standards. Marcus was a scholarship student, the only black student in his class, and that, in Winters' distorted view, was an affront to the excellence of the academy. In the empty hallway, Marcus leaned against the cold metal lockers, breathing deeply to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. It wasn't the first time he had faced humiliation for being the son of a fisherman. Ever since he had won the scholarship for his exceptional grades, certain teachers and students had made a point of constantly reminding him that he didn't belong there. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket, a message from his father. "Everything okay, son? I remembered that today is the day of your project presentation. Proud of you." Marcus looked at the message, a sad smile forming on his lips. His father, Raymond Thomas, had no idea what had just happened. A hard-working man who woke up at 4 a.m. every day to ensure his son had opportunities he never had. A man who, despite the circumstances, had always taught him about dignity and self-respect. "I'm fine, Dad. The presentation has been postponed," he lied, unable to worry his father with yet another incident of prejudice. What no one at that school knew, not even his few friends, was that Raymond Thomas, the fisherman, was not just a simple sea worker. The humiliation Marcus had just suffered would be the catalyst for a revelation that no one at that arrogant academy could ever imagine. Marcus put his phone away, his expression subtly changing. Behind his hurt gaze, a spark of determination ignited. There was a secret that had been kept by 3 generations of the Thomas family, a secret that protected Marcus from revealing the true nature of the empire his father and grandfather had quietly built. If this story of prejudice and humiliation touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of discrimination would turn into the greatest lesson that school would ever receive, and how a teacher's arrogance would be confronted by a reality she could never have predicted. Marcus spent the rest of that day avoiding the curious glances of other students. During lunch, he sat alone in a secluded corner of the cafeteria, just watching. His mind, however, was not defeated, it was calculating, planning, deciding. "Can I sit here?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Gabriela Santos, the editor-in-chief of the student newspaper. Tall, with round glasses and a confident demeanor, Gabriela was one of the few people who had treated Marcus with genuine respect since his first day. "I heard about what happened in Winter's class," she said, lowering her voice. "This isn't the first time she's done something like this. Last year she humiliated a Native American scholarship student until he dropped out of school." Marcus nodded slowly. "That won't happen to me." Gabriela smiled, a spark of admiration in her eyes. "That's why I'm here. The paper is doing a story on subtle discrimination among the faculty, anonymous testimonials, of course." She slid a small tape recorder across the table. "If you want to tell your story." At that very moment, across the cafeteria, Professor Winters watched the interaction with an expression of disdain. Leaning toward Principal Adrian Reynolds, she whispered, "Look at that. The little fish is already contaminating other students with his drama. I should have rejected that scholarship when I had the chance." Principal Reynolds, a middle-aged man with a perpetually tired expression, sighed. "Barbara, we need to be more careful. The school has a diversity policy to uphold." "Diversity?" she laughed scornfully. "That boy shouldn't even be here. His parents probably can't read. He's a waste of resources that could go to students who will actually do something with their lives." What they didn't realize was that their voices echoed more than they imagined in the half-empty cafeteria. A few feet away, Gabriela had left the tape recorder running, capturing every prejudiced word. After school, Marcus was walking to the bus stop when a shiny black Bentley pulled up to the curb in front of him. The rear window rolled down smoothly, revealing a middle-aged man with eyes identical to his. "Get in, son," said Raymond Thomas with a tired smile. "Your mother called me. She said you sounded down when she spoke to you earlier." Marcus hesitated. "I didn't want to bother you in the middle of the workday." "You never bother me," Raymond replied as the driver opened the door. "Besides, we need to talk." The interior of the Bentley exuded understated luxury, soft leather, polished wood, state-of-the-art technology seamlessly integrated into the design. It wasn't the first time Marcus had been in that car, but he rarely did so near the school. It was part of the family agreement: keep up appearances, live modestly, protect the legacy. As the vehicle glided through traffic, Raymond watched his son closely. "What happened today?" Marcus finally let his mask slip, his eyes filling with tears as he recounted the public humiliation, the thinly veiled prejudice, the cruel words. Raymond listened silently, his face a complex mixture of pain, contained anger, and determination. "I'm tired, Dad," Marcus finally admitted. "Tired of pretending to be less than I am. Tired of putting up with this so I won't draw attention or keep a low profile." Raymond nodded slowly, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "Do you know why I chose to live this way? Why I stayed on the boat even after I built the company? To teach me the value of hard work," Marcus replied automatically, repeating what he had heard for years. "Partly," Raymond smiled. "But mostly because the sea keeps me honest. When I'm out there, I'm just another fisherman battling the waves. Money means nothing out there. The fish don't care if you show up in a speedboat or a luxury yacht." The car stopped in front of a modern building in the city's financial center, the headquarters of Thomas Marine Enterprises, one of the largest sustainable seafood companies in the country, with subsidiaries on 3 continents. "But sometimes," Raymond continued, his tone changing subtly, "we need to remind people who confuse humility with weakness that they are making a serious mistake." Inside the building, father and son were greeted with immediate respect. Executives in impeccable suits waved, secretaries smiled, and security guards stood discreetly. No one questioned the teenager's presence alongside the CEO. Everyone knew that Marcus Thomas was the heir to an empire built from scratch. In the main office, with a panoramic view of the city, Raymond sat in a chair that commanded a $500 million empire. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with the Westwood Academy board. I've been one of their main anonymous donors for 5 years, although only Principal Reynolds knows that. Marcus' eyes widened. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I wanted you to earn your place on your own merits, not because of our last name. I wanted you to know real life before you knew privilege, Raymond smiled sadly. But maybe it was unfair to expose you to that kind of prejudice for so long. Meanwhile, in the shared apartment where she lived, Gabriella listened to the recording over and over again. Professor Winter's words were unequivocal, explicit in their prejudice. What had started as a story for the school newspaper now seemed much bigger, something that could have real consequences. Her phone vibrated with a message from Marcus. I need to tell you something important tomorrow before class. Be ready with the recorder. What Marcus didn't reveal was that, alongside his father, he was organizing the biggest lesson Westwood Academy would ever receive, a lesson about never judging people by their appearance, background, or occupation. A lesson about respect that Professor Barbara Winters would never forget. That night, while Barbara Winters slept peacefully in her luxurious home in the wealthy suburbs, unaware of the storm approaching, Raymond Thomas made a series of phone calls, to school counselors, other influential parents, even a contact in the State Department of Education. The wheels were in motion. The teacher who thought she was dealing with a simple fisherman's son was about to discover that she had poked not just a sleeping bear, but a shark in the business world, one who protected his son with the same ferocity with which he had built his empire, patiently, strategically, and with no mercy for anyone who threatened his family. The next morning, the routine at Westwood Academy began as usual. Students arrived in their expensive cars, teachers hurriedly reviewed their notes, and Barbara Winters walked through the parking lot with her characteristic air of superiority. That's when an intense and unusual glint caught everyone's attention. A black Bentley Continental GT, impeccably polished, glided majestically through the main entrance. The silent engine of the $500,000 vehicle contrasted with a buzz that immediately spread across the courtyard. "Whose car is that?" whispered one student. "It must be some important donor," replied another. The Bentley parked precisely in the spot reserved for special visitors. The uniformed driver stepped out first, opening the door to reveal Raymond Thomas in a tailored Italian suit, exuding the unmistakable aura of power that only billionaires possess naturally. But it was the second door that caused an absolute commotion. Marcus emerged from the vehicle, dressed in simple clothes but holding his backpack with renewed confidence. Barbara Winters froze in mid-step, her coffee nearly falling from her trembling hand. "It's the fish-smelling boy," someone whispered. "The one she kicked out yesterday." In the main lobby, Principal Reynolds waited nervously. "Mr. Thomas, we weren't expecting you today. The board meeting isn't scheduled until—" "I decided to come early," Raymond interrupted calmly. "I want to witness how my son is treated in regular classes." Winters approached with a forced smile. "Mr. Thomas, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Barbara Winters, teacher of—" "I know exactly who you are, ma'am," Raymond replied coldly. "My son has told me a lot about your teaching techniques." A tense silence hung in the air. Students and teachers formed a semicircle, watching the scene with fascination. "I don't know what Marcus may have said," Winters began, "but I assure you that I maintain the highest standards of excellence." Raymond concluded, "Yes, I value excellence as well. That's why I've invested millions in my son's education, including substantial donations to this academy." Interesting how he never mentioned that, isn't it? He preferred to be known solely on his own merits. The color drained from Barbara's face. "I think we should continue this conversation in the conference room," Director Reynolds interjected, sweating profusely. "Not at all," Raymond replied. "What I have to say will benefit everyone here." That's when Gabriella emerged from the crowd, holding her small tape recorder. "Mr. Thomas, I have something you need to hear." Before anyone could interfere, she pressed the play button. Barbara Winter's crystal-clear voice echoed through the lobby. "Look at that. The little fisherman is already contaminating other students with his drama. I should have rejected that scholarship when I had the chance. And then, the most damning part. That boy shouldn't even be here. His parents probably can't read. He's a waste of resources that could go to students who will actually do something with their lives." Students gasped. Some teachers hung their heads in shame. Barbara looked as if she had been struck by lightning. That was taken out of context," she stammered. Raymond tilted his head, his expression a mixture of disappointment and determination. "It would be interesting to know the proper context for such comments, teacher, especially considering that fisherman who can barely read has 3 patents in the marine industry and revolutionized global sustainable fishing." He turned to the principal. "I would also love to understand the appropriate context for allowing an educator to publicly humiliate a student for his supposed smell, origin, or family occupation." At that moment, Marcus stepped forward. The entire school watched in absolute silence. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone's career," he said with surprising maturity. "I came here to learn and to be respected like every other student. I don't want privileges because of who my father is or what he has built." Raymond smiled discreetly, the pride evident in his gaze. "However," Marcus continued, "I will not accept being humiliated by those who are supposed to teach me. Our family built an empire based on respect, hard work, and integrity, the same values this institution claims to promote." Gabriella took another step forward. "As editor of the school newspaper, I recorded this for a story on discrimination in the faculty. I have other anonymous statements. The evidence paints a clear picture." Principal Reynolds looked as if he were about to faint. "Mr. Thomas, we can resolve this internally." "There's no need to." "On the contrary," Raymond interrupted, "there is every need." He took an elegant envelope from his inside pocket. "My annual donation to Westwood Academy, $5 million. Contingent on the immediate implementation of an anti-discrimination program and a complete review of the institution's disciplinary policies." He looked directly at Barbara Winters. "And the immediate suspension of any educator with a documented history of discriminatory behavior, pending formal investigation." The silence was deafening. The humiliation in Barbara Winters' eyes was palpable, the same humiliation she had inflicted on so many students over the years. In the center of that hallway, where discrimination disguised as tradition had once reigned, a new reality was now taking shape. Power did not lie in expensive clothes or a traditional last name, but in the dignity with which a person faced injustice, and in the courage of those who refused to allow it to continue. 3 months had passed since the historic confrontation at Westwood Academy. What began as an act of discrimination against a single student had sparked a profound transformation throughout the educational institution. In the newly renovated auditorium, Marcus Thomas stood quietly in the back as Principal Reynolds presented the new Dignity and Inclusion program to a mixed audience of parents, students, and educators. The occasional glances in his direction were no longer ones of disdain, but of respect. "In the last 90 days, Reynolds announced, visibly transformed in his demeanor, we have implemented mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff, thoroughly revised our disciplinary code, and established an ethics committee composed of representatives from different ethnic and socio-economic backgrounds." In the front row, Raymond Thomas nodded discreetly. His $5 million donation had not been a mere gesture, it had come with clear demands for structural change and strict deadlines for implementation. Barbara Winters was not present. Following an independent investigation that revealed a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning more than a decade, the renowned educator had been permanently removed from teaching. The scandal had even made the local newspapers, irreparably damaging her reputation. Sources close to her reported that she was living in seclusion, unable to find employment at any reputable educational institution. "The real change," Reynolds continued, "came when we started listening, really listening, without assumptions or preconceptions. We discovered that many of our scholarship students faced barriers we had never recognized. In the back row, Gabriella smiled. The student newspaper she edited had become a powerful platform for previously silenced voices. Her series of reports, invisible among us, had received national recognition and earned her an investigative journalism scholarship. After the ceremony, Marcus was surrounded by classmates who had previously barely noticed him. Among them was Charlotte Williams, the student council president. "The admissions committee wants your help in revamping the scholarship selection process," she said. "Your perspective would be really valuable." Marcus smiled. "I'd be happy to help. I also have some ideas about a mentoring program for new scholarship recipients." As they headed for the exit, Raymond put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Proud of you, Marcus. You could have used this whole situation to your own advantage, or to flaunt our position, but you chose to turn it into something greater." "I learned from the best," Marcus replied. "Mom always said that our wealth is only valuable if it can bring about real change." It was true. Gloria Thomas, who had died 5 years earlier, had been the moral force in the family. An anthropologist dedicated to the study of traditional fishing communities, she had inspired Raymond to transform his small fishing boat into a company that respected both the ocean and the people who depended on it. In the parking lot, Gabriella caught up with Marcus. "My editor at the national magazine wants to publish an expanded version of my story," she said, beaming. "They want to incorporate stories from other schools as well." "That's fantastic." Marcus hugged her briefly. "I always knew your work was bigger than Westwood." "What about you?" Gabriella asked. "Harvard, Stanford, or Yale?" "I know you got into all of them." Marcus hesitated. "Actually, I chose State University." "Really? With your grades and, well, resources, you could go anywhere." "Exactly," he replied. "And I chose to stay here." Real change happens when we stay and face the problems, not when we run away to more comfortable environments. The following month, Westwood Academy welcomed its largest and most diverse class of scholarship students. The program Marcus had established, which combined academic support, mentoring, and practical resources, was ensuring that every student could thrive, regardless of her background. Raymond Thomas remained on the school board, now as an official member rather than an anonymous donor. His experience in transforming a small family business into a sustainable empire proved invaluable to an institution that needed to reinvent itself. As for Ms. Winter's old classroom, it had been transformed into the Gloria Thomas Center for Cultural Studies, a space dedicated to celebrating diversity and open discussion about prejudice, privilege, and inclusion. On a sunny afternoon, as Marcus led a group of freshman scholarship recipients around campus, one of them asked, "Is it true that you got kicked out of a class for smelling like fish?" Marcus smiled. "It's true. And you know what the most important lesson I learned was? That our identity should never be a source of shame. My father fished not because he had to, but because he loved the sea and respected his roots. His humility taught me more about dignity than any etiquette class ever could." The group stopped in front of a newly installed mural at the main entrance. Prominently displayed was a quote from Gloria Thomas. "The true character of a society is not revealed in how it treats its most privileged members, but in how it recognizes the dignity of those who have historically been marginalized." Below the quote was a photograph, Raymond Thomas, young and smiling on his first fishing boat, with little Marcus at his side. A reminder that respect is not measured by the size of the car you drive or the prestige of your last name, but by the integrity with which you treat every human being, regardless of their appearance or background. In a world where prejudice often hides behind polite smiles and respectable institutions, Marcus Thomas's story has become a powerful reminder that real change begins with one person who refuses to accept injustice, even when it is disguised as tradition or excellence. If this story of overcoming adversity and transformation has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that show how small moments of courage can spark waves of change that transcend generations. After all, the best response to prejudice is never revenge, but the creation of a world where everyone can be respected for who they are, not for what they have or where they came from.